Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself, and I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin.
How are you?
I was going to say hello, Bella.
Is she with you?
Yeah, she's way over there, but I've been saying her name so much that I keep calling everyone Bella. I call Zoe Bella. I'm just saying Bella all the time. But no, she's doing good. I'm doing good. I'm exhausted. I'm fighting a cold. A friend of mine got COVID.
Oh, no.
And I don't think that I can cure COVID, but I feel like I'm coming down with a cold. And so I've been fighting that for the past few days, up into my vitamin C and immune support and medicinal mushrooms. Oh, it's funny because I stitched a video from TikTok because, I'm trying to get into TikTok. And in the video, someone said, she wanted people to stitch it to say, what is your priority? It's like, because she says, what she sees is that people are very, very, obsessive, just very upset. I shouldn't say obsessive, but very much into their dog's diet and health, but they don't take care of themselves, or they're very much into their own diet and health, but they're not taking as good a care of their dogs. And she wanted to know which one is it. And I was happy to say, well, neither for me, but years ago when I first started, my tagline on my blog was "My dogs eat better than I do."
I remember when that was your tagline.
And I would have people contact me to ask me if I had trademarked it. And I almost did. And the reason why I never did is because, I don't want that to be my tagline. I don't want my dogs to eat better than I do. And now I'm happy to say that that's not the case. I've learned so much. So like my dogs have CBD oil daily. So do I. My dogs have medicinal mushrooms daily. So do I. And, making sure that we, walking the dogs to get exercise on a daily basis. In fact, even though I'm not feeling great today, I wasn't up for walking 3 dogs, but I took Zoe and we went for, just a short, about mile and a half walk. And, I have a little thing on my phone that counts my steps and everything. But I was just like really excited to respond to that. And a few of the comments that I got to my response were people doing the same thing. Like people are learning from, like, after a while, it soaks in and we start realizing, I can do this for me too.
My journey with my health has been very intertwined with my dogs, going back 10, 12 years now. Like I started having weird health issues and, and then I would go into problem solving mode for myself. And then we started learning about the dogs, and their food, and we were trying to do better for them. And then I've had like a couple, even before the breast cancer, I had a couple other weird like health thing, like mysteries of my own to deal with. And I feel like every time I'm learning about myself, I'm also learning about the dogs, and we'll learn things about the dogs that help me learn things about myself. It's like been very intertwined. So I could never say my dogs eat better than I do, because we're, that was one of the frustrating things about, getting a cancer diagnosis is like everything we eat's organic and we get all our meat from local farms and we have water filters. And like, we thought we were doing like all the things that you're supposed to do,
I mean, it is. It's, I think the hardest thing, I get emails from people who have the same frustration. And I think the reason why some people, and it's not like it's millions of people, it's a handful of people, reach out to me privately, is when you share that you have a cancer diagnosis publicly on Facebook, I think unintentionally people's response is kind of like, well, what did you do wrong? Rather than, Of course you did. The stats are out there, and there's a good chance that this is going to happen with our dogs. And I read today that the instances of dogs getting cancer is basically in line with humans.
Yeah.
So it's very much one of those things where in our old age, many of us will die of some form of cancer. And it's, we do the best that we can. And I mean, I think you and I have even said this, where there's always that story of someone's uncle who drank Coke every day, smoked a pack of cigarettes every day, and drank beer and all this, and lived till they were 99 years old. Probably died because they fell off a tractor or something.
Right.
Whereas, there's the vegan who did everything 100% perfect and got cancer at 25. So
Right.
it's just, there's so many things in our world that we can't control. And I've switched my focus from trying to prevent cancer to making my dog's immune system stronger, so that they can better survive anything that comes their way.
Yeah.
And that being
us.
said, that's why I took one of my dogs in to have a rabies vaccination.
Oh.
So, he will be fully vaccinated. So he's having the other vaccinations. I just am spacing them out over time rather than having him get hit with everything all at once. I want to give him an opportunity to have this go through a system. And then we'll go and and it's not every vaccination. I'm just looking at what is going to be the most risk for our area. And that's what I'll be vaccinating him against. So he'll go in for one more vaccine, I think. I think I'm going to be going for the Bordetella, but honestly, I don't know. I'm going back and forth, still doing research, but I've been doing a lot of, since I switched to a new vet, I have a friend who is a vet tech, and lots of people I know who are veterinarians and are new veterinarians, and just thinking about the risk. And I know that Rodrigo at almost 13 will not be vaccinated. It's not necessary. And Zoe, she's 9 years old. She's not going to be vaccinated either. Rodrigo and Zoe don't go anywhere. I mean, except for going on walks, and, they don't interact with other dogs because Rodrigo is dog reactive and Zoe does not like other dogs. And so their risk is very low. Whereas Apollo has a whole little pack of friends, and he goes to see them, not at this time, but starting in the spring, he'll be going over. I go to my friend's house probably 2-3 times a month, and he just goes and runs and plays. Bella is being introduced to this pack of friends, and so she'll start interacting with them. Plus, all of the people who adopt her litter mates, we all have a message chain. And so we're going to start doing dates where we all get to puppies together.
Oh, I love that.
I hired a friend of mine who is a pet photographer who's going to come out on one of the dates and do photography for us. So we just want them to stay in touch. I kind of want them to stay in touch for selfish reasons. On one hand, I just want her to have her friends, and I think it'll be fun. But two, I think it would be if anyone gets sick or anything weird happens with the dog.
Yeah, it's interesting to know.
Yeah, we'll be able to be there to support each other. And so that's why I want to do that as well. But because of that, so it's not going to a dog park or anything. And these are dogs that we all know. I just don't feel comfortable with my dogs potentially bringing something home to Rodrigo. And so that's why I just want to have them healthy and safe. And it's also not fair for me to bring my unvaccinated dogs around other people's dogs. Because even though you have a vaccine, you're not bulletproof. You just have, a little protection. You can still get sick. So we're still seeing adult dogs get parvo. Most of those adult dogs were never vaccinated against parvo, but we're seeing that through the rescue world. And I'm just not willing to take a chance. My thing is talking to my veterinarian is that I want to space out the vaccine. So I will never do annually, but I don't think every 3 years is too often. So we're sort of negotiating, and I'm like, every 5 years is good enough for me. And so basically for Apollo at 4 years old, this will be his last vaccination. And then Bella will get her 1-year boosters, and then 4 or 5 years after that, she'll get a vaccine, and then that'll be her last vaccination. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not over vaccination, but it is some protection. And it's weird because I did a video so that I'm going to upload to social media later this week. And I'm curious to know how people will respond to it, because I know that someone messaged me and said that, gave me what for being, I'm now anti-raw, and I'm going back to traditional, and I'm thinking it's because I posted that I was planning on having him vaccinated for rabies a couple months ago. And I'm not quite sure where they got the anti-raw from. Maybe it's because when I said that I wanted to focus more on the gut microbiome than stressing about macro and micronutrients. And maybe that gave them the impression that I wasn't going to feed raw anymore. I'm not sure, but it's interesting because it feels like as members of the fresh food community, we have to do all of these things or we get booted out. So if you say that you're getting a rabies vaccine because you have no choice, then everyone hits you with, well, can you do titers and can you do this? Well, I would just never tell anyone, or I would just do this. And it's just sort of like, well, that's not really feasible for everyone. I mean, I got away with it for years because it's not like the police come to the door and go, show me your rabies certificate. No one seems to care around here. My biggest concern was simply Rodrigo getting older and the fact that we've lost 2 dogs over the past 2 years. And it feels like a miracle that not only Rodrigo is still with us, but he's thriving. He's doing so well. And I just don't want to shake that boat.
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we're the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
That was something Tim and I have had 2 experiences recently. Once when we took Nino to get x-rays at a vet right by our house, and then the experience of taking Penny to the emergency vet. And it was just so interesting to us how bombarded we were both times with like, when was their rabies vaccine? Are they on flea tick? Are they on heartworm? Yeah. And, I got to tell you, especially at the emergency vet, I'm kind of like, my dog is having an acute medical crisis right now. Like, what the hell difference does it make if she gets freaking frontline? It was just interesting to me just how both Tim and I, after both of those appointments, had felt so beat over the head with this kind of thing. It was just like a reminder of how fortunate we are to work with the veterinarian that we do primarily.
I know it's interesting because it's like on both sides, it's too much, because there's the community where I know everyone means well and it's coming from a good place and there is solid information behind what people are saying, but it's very much a pressure type of situation where I don't think people realize it, but you are making it so that people don't want to speak up. People don't want to ask questions because everyone has such solid, unmovable opinions about, vaccines, about spay and neuter, about kibble and about dog training, that, you can't just ask a question or share that you're going to try something without everyone having a complete meltdown, as if you came out and admitted that, yeah, I kick puppies first thing in the morning. Don't you? And then on the flip side, there are these people, this traditional community, which they also mean well. I think partly, this is their education and their experience, but also in response to the holistic community where they're kind of going over the top. And I was, really impressed with our new vets because they asked me, do you do flea and tick? And I was like, nope, I don't. And, and if they want to know, I actually have learned, I don't give them an explanation or anything. If they want to know what I do, I'll explain. Well, I feed my dogs a fresh food diet. I add garlic to their meals in the spring and the fall. If they give me the whole, well, garlic is toxic, and I'm like, I'll just ask them, have you read the study? And are you aware that the guy behind the study actually regrets the study because it has led to so much misinformation? And I'm happy the next time I come in to bring you all of the information so you can check up on it. But no, actually, garlic isn't toxic to dogs. I mean, I'm not giving my dogs 32 bulbs of garlic every
Right.
I mean, and but it's interesting because we're as pet parents are stuck in the middle of all of these messages coming at us from all different directions that it becomes a bit overwhelming. And I just want to take a deep breath, take a step back, and just look at my dog and just say, dogs have survived for, a millennia without our interference. Maybe I can calm down a little bit. I think it's important to educate ourselves, but I just feel like the stress of it all gets to be too much.
Like, I hope that I can always be like a judgment-free resource for people that have questions. Like, I want to be like, this is the no judgment zone. Like, I know what I'm doing for my dogs and I know why I do it, but I totally get that people make all different kinds of decisions based on all different kinds of factors,
It is. I think it's one of those, someone sent me a message this morning asking me what type of, they were like, they feed their dog raw, home cooked, and kibble. So they do everything. And they're like, is there a name for this type of diet? And they're just like sort of nervous about asking publicly because people would be triggered by the kibble part, which is such a silly thing to think. Why? I don't understand how people can get so upset about a choice someone else makes about their dog. But again, I think it comes from a good place. It's just, social media, the delivery of information on social media can come across as harsh sometimes. But, I explained that I would call that a hybrid diet.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, is this okay? Would you approve of this? And I just said, if your dog is doing well, then you're doing something right. It's like, I don't believe in judging how someone chooses to feed their dog because I don't know their situation and I don't know their dog. So if your dog is thriving, if you're happy with what you're doing, if you feel like you're doing a good job, then, that's, you're good. And it's like, it's just as long as you're staying open to new information, that's the most that I think anyone could really expect of themselves. But I've been talking to a few people about, like the fresh food community, because it feels like there was a time when we were all very much, a kumbaya type of community. And now we're very fractured. Like there are so many people I don't speak to anymore and haven't spoken to in a long time. I think part of it has to do with 2020.
I was thinking that.
Yeah, everything that happened in 2020, because suddenly, because, we used to only talk about dogs and cats and raw feeding. And, that was all we talked about. And maybe we talked about some TVs and music and stuff, but we never talked about politics. And suddenly people started talking about politics and people are like, oh, I didn't realize you felt that way. And I think that shaped a lot of opinions of people. People started distancing themselves from each other. Because I started seeing people click up in a different way where, they were basically on, along political lines in 2020. And then, afterwards, I think that raw feeding, or maybe not so much afterwards, but at the same time, people started monetizing raw feeding, because that's when we also started seeing a lot of people become nutritionists. And I think that, not to say that anyone out there who's a nutritionist is causing a problem, but I think for some people, they do it because they're fascinated, they love the topic, and they want to help people. But I think that there are other people who sort of feel like, I've been doing this for 30 years and I know everything, and how dare you question anything that I'm saying. And they see these little upstarts coming up who went and took the COSI course, as competition. And that has created some type of dynamic within the community where I'm just sort of sitting back going, what's happening? Why is everyone so mad at each other? So.
Well, I had an interesting experience over the weekend that I thought you'd appreciate, just speaking of when it was sometimes a struggle for me to be judgment-free. So every year here in Maryland, there is a big event called the World of Pets Expo. And it's like a 3-day event at the state fairgrounds. And actually, I think it's going back like 5 years or so now. I had like the coolest day ever where I had a seminar in the morning with Sally Morgan, who is the sister of Dr. Judy Morgan, and she teaches T-Touch. And so Tim and I came down and we had Penny and Nino with us, and we did this whole T-Touch seminar with her. And then Tim took the dogs home, and I stayed and had an afternoon class with Dr. Judy Morgan. So that was like Erin's coolest day ever.
I love Tellington Touch. I did that with Rodrigo when he was a puppy.
Yeah, it was really interesting for Nino because he's such our fearful guy. So there are like a couple things that we still remember from it that we try every once in a while. That was like our big motivation for wanting to learn some stuff, is just anything we can do to help Nino feel more safe in the world. We try to learn. But I think ever since COVID, Dr. Judy and her sister haven't come back. And I don't even think they had any of those cool, like, pay extra type seminars this year. Because they always have, like, something that I'm like, should I do that? But they didn't have anything like that this year. So it was just a big vendor space. And they had dock diving. Oh. And so actually my cousin and his wife came up from Delaware with their lab. I think she's close to a year old, and she actually did her first dock diving, and she's like a total water dog. So that was very exciting. And some friends of mine were there doing training demos and things like that. And so it was just an interesting thing, because I don't know what I expect, but it's dog friendly. But there's a lot of people bringing their dogs there that like I would never bring my dogs. Like the one time that we did the seminars, we were not in the main area where everything was close quarters. We were in like had a totally different parking lot, and it was like just us. And that was the only reason why I had agreed. Like I had investigated it, because I was like, I'm not taking my dogs into this, big vendor area where it's all these booths and everything's close quarters and tight, walkways and and it was just such a reminder to me of like what an average, like a normal dog owner is, like somebody who hasn't spent the last 15 years, like literally learning and reading and obsessing over everything, and just like what a lack of awareness there is about like body language and behavior. And like there were so many tails tucked, and it made me sad. And it was just so interesting, some of like there was some big like doggy daycare type chains, and they had different things to get people over. They would have these big elaborate like trade show setups, and they would have like this one in particular had almost like a ball pit, kind of like a kiddie pool like ball pit. And this woman's like trying to get her dog like, oh look, aren't you excited? And like the dog totally had his tail tucked and was like not he's like completely overwhelmed and like doesn't care about this ball pit, but like she was really excited about it. And it was just such a reminder of how just like a lack or like a disconnect, a lack of like awareness of people get really excited about their dog and think, I would like to go to a trade show. I bet my dog would too. And it's like, no, not really.
Yeah, I find it interesting because I see I don't take my dogs to places where, like you said, if it's going to be tight quarters, because we don't actually have expos anymore here. They don't get a good showing, because Seattle is the obvious place to have an expo. But it's such a pain in the neck to drive down there, find parking. And a lot of people want to bring it's just a pain. So people don't really go attend to them. So they stop coming to Seattle. But we do have lots of events for, dog lovers. And there's certain events where I know what the layout's going to be, and there's plenty of space. So I can have a dog or maybe even 2 dogs with me and still keep space from other people. But I still don't bring my dogs, because you can't always trust other people to respect that. It's interesting because I saw a video today. It was another one of a dog trainer sticking their leg out to protect their dog, from another dog that was just like, oh, I'm going to go over here now. And it was, again, the same thing of, the other dog owner got offended, but it's just like, he's not kicking your dog. He's actually just setting a clear boundary to keep your dog from approaching his dog. And that's a good thing. And as a person who has a dog that is a little out of control at times, Apollo, I make a point of not taking him to a place where he's going to be just like all over the place, super excited. I would have to walk him for 10 miles to get him to be calmed down enough to handle 5 minutes in that location. And even then it would be very hard, but it's the other people. There was it was this past year. We were it doesn't matter when it was, Kimberly, but we went to a farmer's market. So there's a farmer's market every weekend in the summertime. And my friend and I met for breakfast, and she had her dog with her. And then we just walked around the farmer's market. And there was this woman with a small dog on a flexi leash, fully all the way extended out,
always
howling and snarling at my friend's dog. And we're like doing a huge wide berth, like to stay away. And my friend's dog is looking at the other dog like, what is your problem? I mean, obviously not, I'm totally humanizing, but still we were all looking at that dog. But the woman was just like, oh, look at you. She just wants to say hi. And, and she just keeps coming over. And we finally were like, okay, well, no, thank you. And I'm just looking at this woman like, do you see your dog? Because your dog looks like it wants to tear our dog from limb to limb. And you think that your dog is just wanting to say hi. But people, they don't know. And, unfortunately, they won't learn unless someone is kind enough to tell them at a time when they're open to the information or something horrible happens.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just, like I said, just such a reminder of what a lack of information that there is, or lack of awareness, education about these things. I mean, and then the one thing that really made my head want to explode was this guy had this little puppy, like a tiny little puppy that should not have been out in public, that he's just walking around and kind of with it in his hand, on his arm. And I was just horrified. Then, some of the vendors, so this was just sort of funny to me. Half the vendors there were not even pet related. There's roofing companies, solar panel companies. There was a Botox stand and a skincare stand. And I'm like, okay.
How many MLMs were there?
That we saw 3 different Scentsy people and, but I was excited. The main reason I had wanted to go was there was a seminar about cannabis medicine for pets, just a free thing that you could, a lecture that you could participate in. And I felt really bad for the people presenting because the facility had not provided them with a microphone. And it's very loud, and some of the vendors would have music blaring and trying to get people's attention. So I felt very bad for them. It was hard to hear, and they were talking about it for people and pets. And so I actually discovered a new to me anyway, CBD company in Maryland called Wallman's Apothecary, and they're actually grown on a regenerative agricultural farm in Maryland where they are part of a crop rotation system and stuff. So I was really geeking out listening to them talk about it, and I felt like they were really on board with everything, for instance, that Angela would teach us about the certificate of analysis and how to read it, and everything is QR codes that you can read it, and how to find make sure there aren't contaminations, and I really appreciated it. I felt like I had a checklist in my head, and they were hitting all the things of what they were supposed to say. And so it was just interesting seeing, there wasn't a ton of people there, but there was maybe 15 or 20 people there, that were listening to this. And so I just get excited anytime there's good information being shared.
Yeah, that's really good, because I mean, I know what you mean. I think one of the reasons why I stopped having a booth at expos is because it's too overwhelming. It's too sad when you see the dogs who are struggling with being there. And the other thing I tend to attract the people who want to question everything that I'm doing. I mean, no real reason, but just I had one woman approach me and goes, well, I fed my dog raw and nothing happened. And I'm like, oh, well, what were you feeding? And it was just sort of oh, well, I just gave them some random thing. It wasn't a diet. And I was like, so you were just sort of just giving them table scraps? And they're like, well, yeah. And I was like, and how long, oh, it was just a couple of times. And I'm like, okay, so if I went to the gym twice in a year, I can't be mad that I didn't lose weight. And again, it's just like, there's this, I think we're in this bubble. I guess this is our echo chamber of fresh food and everything, that when we step outside of that bubble, it's just it's like everything is so noisy and loud and just like, oh my gosh. I don't know why I'm shocked every time, but I am. But I love the idea that there is, although I know that, CBD is really saturated. It's a very saturated market. It's always nice to find another brand that's doing things correctly.
Yeah.
And I say this because I think you've seen this, but I just want to share some ingredients in CBD treats that someone wanted me to try. So
I assumed you turned them down.
Well, no, I didn't. I asked them, can you tell me more about why you chose these ingredients? And they never responded. So one of the treats, the ingredients are organic date paste, whole grain oats, margarine, citric acid, natural smoky bacon flavor, dark brown sugar, oat milk, chia seeds, tahini, sodium bicarbonate, broad spectrum CBD oil, sunflower. I guess this is anyway,
lecithin or something.
Yeah, that word. It's like the CBD oil is the second to the last ingredient.
And it's only broad spectrum. And
yes.
And like, why is there multiple forms of sugar?
Yes. And so that's the one. The second CBD treat, wheat flour, soybean flour, water, beef, certified pure CBD. And for some reason, the way it said certified pure CBD is sketchy to me, because it's like, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Glycerin, whole corn, sugar, bacon, corn syrup, natural smoke flavor, bone phosphate, salt, potassium sorbate, and phosphoric acid. So whole corn. And the thing about it is that they're, going back to your example of the expo, 90-something% of pet parents out there don't know that these are terrible ingredients for CBD treats.
For any treat.
They will just have heard that, CBD treats, and they're supposed to be really good, and my dog has anxiety, and so I'm going to give him these treats, and
it's all natural ingredients.
Exactly. And it's just like, no, this is horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's just, I guess it's just a good reminder sometimes. My husband was joking, like, oh, you were out and about with the normies. Because it is a good reminder to me of like where everybody else is coming from and what, like literally, if I could like do a public service announcement to the world about anything, it would probably be about how to learn your dog's body language. Like, I just feel like that's so incredibly important.
And we'll put, I want to put a book in the notes, What's My Dog Thinking by Hannah Malloy, because that is the book that I always go back to. It's so interesting. I mean, I remember years ago, I was at the dog park, and this guy's dog kept leaning into him, and he was just sort of like, pushing his dog away and just sort of like, well, my dog is marking me and letting the other dogs know that I belong to him. And I was just sort of like, that's not what your dog's doing. And he just sort of looked at me, and I was like, your dog's seeking comfort because he's completely uncomfortable in this environment. And so he's leaning into you because you're his human. And so he's seeking comfort and you're pushing him away. And he was just sort of like, and at the time I'm standing and Sydney's standing between my legs. She's just sitting there. I was like, that's why she does this. She hates coming here, but we come here because Rodrigo's running around going crazy in the dog park. I was like, he loves it here. So she comes, she sits here with me, and I keep all the dogs away from her. And then we wait for him to tire himself out, and then we go home. But it's just little things. I still see, I saw a TikTok of a guy who was talking about how you have to be in complete control of your dog, and you should go in and take their food away sometimes just to let them know that you're in charge. And I'm like, good luck with that, dude. But it's just sort of like there's still very much a mindset of like the alpha training. I had someone actually yank my dog once to because he jumped up and they grabbed him and they slammed him down, not like viciously. I know I shouldn't say slam, but they pushed him down. And I just quietly walked to them and took my dog away from them. Like while I stared at them, and I don't think they were like, they did it without thinking. And I was,
where did this happen?
I was out someplace, and he just saw someone that we knew, and he was excited, and he ran up, and he's a jumper, and they just responded, and I got my dog back, and I was just like, well, I'll keep him away from you. And they were like, okay. And we just moved on from there. But
my eyebrows were like sky high.
I know. But I was just sort of like, yeah, I don't like that. I don't think you should, just like I would never go and spank someone's child.
Right.
I don't think you should, penalize my dog for being a dog. I mean, if you're upset with my dog jumping on you, you should probably come at me, because I'm the one that is allowing it to happen at home. So he thinks that he can do it when we're not at home. And, he was a puppy too. So it's just like, he's a puppy. Let him, just be patient. But I think it's one of those things where I think you hit the nail on the head, where people do not really understand their dog's body language. And it is a judgment, but it's not it's not you're a horrible person type of judgment. It's just the truth. I mean, because
it was just a huge observation and just a huge shocking reminder to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's so true. I was the same way. I mean, some of the things I did when Rodrigo and Sydney were younger, I mean, I was that person. I was that person that I was a horrible pet parent. And I let them do whatever the heck they wanted. And they were my babies, and, I was obnoxious when it came to my dogs, and today I'm not. When I took Apollo to the vet, he's a husky, so he was, they knew he had arrived because he let everyone know he was there. But I had a firm control over him. Whereas, if this had been 10 years ago, I would have let him go and greet every single person because he's just being friendly. He just likes people, whereas now it's just like, no, this is the vet. We don't do that here. We're going to sit down and we're going to wait until the vet comes out, and then we're going to go in here and get on the scale. We have things that we're doing. But, he loves his vet tech. So he gave her tons of kisses before we left. But yeah, I think we forget.
Ooh, so I'm going to put a couple other links in the show notes too, because I love the book that you're talking about, which I found out about from you and Kathy. And there's two other ones that I love too. There's an old school one called Calming Signals. And I that was the first book I ever got on this subject. And it blew my mind wide open when I saw it. And then there's a newer one that's more illustrated, but she does a really amazing job. It's by Lily Chin, and I'll have a link in the show notes too. So I think that one's great about and that one's divided up by stress, fear, different happy play, and I think that one's also great. I actually got that for my friend that has a young son, because I thought it was fun for him to be able to be oh, this is when the doggy's doing that. This is when my doggy's doing this, because it's educational, but it's kind of illustrated in a way that kids would like it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was I wish I could just go hand one of these out to everybody as they came in the door,
Well, ultimately, I think it's just a reminder of, the whole idea of meeting people where they are. I get why people, if someone is feeding kibble, it's just sort of well, no, you shouldn't be feeding kibble. You need to be feeding raw. I get that. But if someone is feeding kibble and it's working, or they think it's working for them, you're going to have a hard time bullying them into feeding raw.
Yeah.
And, people, we walk through life. I mean, as I said, I was terrible, but I thought I was doing everything right. I would let my dogs run up to people, run up to other dogs. I was terrible, but I thought it was perfectly acceptable until I got into a situation that could have ended badly. Thankfully, it wasn't my fault. It was someone else who was letting their dog walk off leash, had no recall whatsoever. And their dog ran up to me with my dogs, all who were on leash. I got tangled up, was on the ground. I'm trying to beg this woman to come and get her dog. She's like 50 yards away screaming that dreaded phrase, she's friendly. And I'm just sort of like, I don't care. Come get your dog. And my energy is negative. So my dogs are picking up on me and going, obviously this dog is a problem. And I can feel them starting to get a little aggravated. And thankfully the woman, because she was just walking and I'm just like, can you just jog? Or, I mean, can you help me? I'm on the
a little urgency, sense of urgency here. Yeah.
I mean, but eventually she picked up on the fact that, you know, she needed to come and get her dog, and she did come. And the dog is a sweet, sweet little dog. But it was just sort of like, that was when I realized, maybe I should, you know, honor the leash laws. I mean, and not do that. And so, but you know, a lot of people they truly, truly don't know. And it's not because they're being malicious or anything. They just don't know.
So it's interesting for me because we've always had pit bull dogs, and, you know, I so didn't know anything about dogs when we got Lucy, which is like coming up on like 20 years ago. And so I started researching, and then, you know, because I didn't know that people didn't like pit bulls. I didn't even know anything like at all about it. But then I became so determined. Like, I've always put so much extra pressure on us to like have like the breed ambassador dog, you know, and my dogs have never been like perfectly trained, but I've just always been very like situationally aware of like, you know, if we're in a vet office, if we're in, you know, a park, if we're, you know, walking down the street, like I feel like I'm overly, you know, like aware to protect my dogs and to protect anything from happening, because if anything happens and it's a pit bull,
they're going to,
you know, so I've just been like, I've always sort of been over the top, and most of the pit bull owners who I know feel very much the same way, that we all like put a lot of pressure on ourselves to keep, you know, situations handled. And so it's at least, I feel like, gotten me comfortable, like reading other dogs' body language and avoiding if I need to. And with, you know, we're very fortunate now with our vet office that, you know, I just go to her house, and it's not like a traditional vet office, but like my girl Kahlua would get very, very stressed out in a vet waiting room, to the point where like she would give herself nosebleeds from like her blood pressure going up with the stress. So like I did find out like I can just go in and, you know, tell them like, hey, I'm out in the car with Kahlua, and they would just come and like wave us over. So I didn't have to bring her in and make her sit that, you know, I always feel like vet waiting rooms are so poorly designed that, you know, it's like this horrible tile floor, and you're in this U shape where the dogs are just like staring at each other. And you know, I'm always like, who designed this? Because this is not good for pets. And so I always feel like that's a good, you know, hack for, you know, taking your dog to the vet. Like, just wait in the car. And with the COVID thing, sometimes you can just call them and be like, hey, I'm here, and not have to go in and do that.
Yeah. I think it's one of those. I was so relieved when I showed up at the vet and no one was there. There was like one woman.
I know, it was like the best feeling.
It was so awesome, because I just went and sat on the opposite side. Because even at the vet's clinic, you know, I went there with, like, when I went with Bella, and this, so I'm not a friendly person. When I go about my days, I just don't want to talk to people. I mean, I get it that people like to talk. I mean, if we're friends, if I know you, I'll talk to you. But I really just want to, when I'm with my dogs, I just want to be with my dogs. I want to focus on my dogs. I want to pay attention to my dogs. I don't want to have a conversation really with people. And so I went in with, when I went with Bella, and because it's a puppy, I knew that it's like, oh, a puppy.
Right.
And, you know, I heard this lady in the background going, well, you have to ask the nice lady if it's okay if the dog meets the puppy. And I'm just like, golly. And so I, you know, put on the fake smile and turn around and go, no, thank you. And she's like, oh, well, she says no, she doesn't want anyone meeting her puppy. And it's just sort of like, yeah, lady, I don't know you. And we're at the vet's office. This is not a, you know, puppy play date. This is not the dog park. This is not doggy daycare. It's a vet's office. I don't know where your dog is here. And like you said, this is a freaking puppy. I mean, that's all going in my head. But on the outside, I'm just smiling and going, thank you. And then sitting clear on the opposite side of the room. But it's just, Yeah.
Have you ever had like strangely heart-to-heart like conversations with people in the vet office? Like I feel like there was a period of time where like vet room waiting conversations were like a thing in our lives. I think it was when Lucy was sick and we were taking there a lot, and it was like I said, like, like this woman's like pouring her heart out to me, and then they like say Lucy, and I'm like, oh, see you later, and then I'm like, it's like this weird phenomenon.
I have with raw feeding, because either just as the conversation went and it comes up, and that's an interesting thing, especially if I'm at a traditional vet's clinic, because at this point in time, a lot of people have heard of raw feeding with all the brands and stuff out there, but they are of the opinion that it's like crazy, insanely expensive because they're looking at commercial raw for their big, gigantic dogs. It's just, I try actually not to get into, I'm a horrible introverted person.
I'm very much the same way. I'm over here laughing because I'm the same way.
Just like, I'm a horrible person. I'm looking at people like, I feel so uncomfortable when I'm at the vet's clinic. Like one time when I went with, I think I was with Zoe, someone's dog was going to be put down. So they were crying and it was all sad. And there's a time when I had a puppy years and years ago, Riley. She died of parvo. So she had to be euthanized, and I'm crying. And this lady goes, well, she's in a crappy mood.
Oh my God.
And I didn't hear it because I was just blubbering. And Johan was like, yes, we're putting our puppy down today. That's why she's crying. And the woman was just like, oh. And I think her daughter worked for the clinic, and her daughter was like, I'm going to need you to go and just hang out outside, Mom, because you're upsetting people. And I missed the whole thing. Johan told me about it afterwards. So I'm afraid to talk to people because I'm afraid that someone's going to tell me that their dog has cancer, their dog is dying or something. Because although I don't like to have those conversations with people, I find that people really like to talk about the darkness. Like people like to, and I just don't. I'm like, I have too much. I don't want to hear about your dog's story. And also because I don't have a poker face. So if they're telling me that their dog has cancer while they're at the vet clinic picking up a huge bag of Purina or Hill's Science Diet, which Hill's came out with a cancer formula.
Of course they did.
But, when they're doing that, all of that's on my face. Like, oh my God, it's just, I worry that it's on my face. And so I just feel like I'm coming across as like this horrible person that just hates human beings.
No, I'm very introverted. I like having like a big bubble of like personal space when I'm out in public. And I remember I had this coworker and we used to like walk down the street to this coffee shop to get sandwiches for lunch, and it would sometimes be like really busy in there, and it would be like you're like crowded, and I would like be like sweating bullets, and and then like some random person would just be like, oh, they're busy today, and like she's like, you could just see like the horror on my face of like, oh God, now like a stranger's talking to me, and then if like somebody's trying to like cut through the line to like get over to get like napkins or something, and like I'm just like, oh God, like and she's like, I can literally watch you like melting down. And she sent me this meme one time that said something like, what's the first thing you notice when people come up to you? And the answer was the audacity. And she was just like, that is the most Erin thing ever.
So yeah, I could totally understand. I actually tend to laugh. My whole thing is just don't talk to me. If no one talks to me, I can handle anything because I just feel like I'm invisible and I'm just sort of watching everything happen. Like when I go to Costco, like Johan hates going to Costco unless it's first thing when they open. So we can go in there, get our stuff, get out.
Yeah.
The other day, he's like, you're on your own. Here's some cash. Bye. And I don't mind going to Costco when it's crazy busy because I think it's hilarious that people cut each other off. If people drove the way they push carts in Costco, we would have 10 car pileups on a daily basis. It's insane. And then the fact that my favorite thing about Costco is that people will abandon their cart. You will be pushing along and the person in front of you will stop, leave their cart to go get a freebie and just sit there waiting for it, talking to the person as they're trying it out. And you're standing there like, so you're leaving your cart in front. I mean, they're just completely oblivious. And so I always go, oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Are you? And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And it's like, because they're so, and I'm convinced that that's how the terrorists are going to get us. They're going to give in the free samples at Costco because no one thinks about the fact that I can't eat free samples from strangers. I think it's scary. But anyway.
Oh yeah, I would never. Yeah,
but I just,
especially in a post-COVID world. But even pre-COVID, I never would have eaten them.
And when it comes to like coffee shops, my favorite thing, which to be honest, I haven't seen a crowded coffee shop around here in a long time, probably because everyone's going through drive-through. But my favorite thing is in a crowded coffee shop, if someone like sort of walks through the line because they're trying to reach napkins or something, there's always that person who preemptively goes, there's a line here. And it's like, and then they quickly realize they misread the situation. And that gives me joy. So
I'll tell you something very funny that happened to me one day. So in this post-COVID world, the coffee shop has actually sort of redesigned so that it's just kind of a window now that you order at. And then they have like a courtyard area with all these outside tables and they're open year round. So I think it was like last summer or something, I'm sitting there and waiting for my food. And I see these two kind of like college age kids and they had some kind of like camera and like recording thing with them. And there's not a lot of people around. And so I can see them kind of looking around and I'm kind of like, oh shit, like they're coming to talk to me about something, you know? And so she comes over and she's just like, you know, we have this assignment from our teacher and we're supposed to interview strangers and ask them about resilience and a time in their life that they had to be resilient. And I was just like, oh, you've come to the right person.
Right now.
But,
very personal conversation to have.
But yeah. So I started like, next thing I know, I'm like talking about breast cancer. I'm talking about all this stuff, you know, and she was like, oh my God. She's like, I want to give you a hug. And it was just a very like weird random thing that happened, you know.
Well, I've had people approach me on the streets of Seattle, you know, like to do an interview, and I'm again so awkward where I'm just sort of like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you. I really can't do this. It's usually political in nature, where it's like, I cannot do this with you, especially with a camera staring at me. I do not want to see myself on TV tonight or have friends go, oh my God, Kimberly, I saw you on television. Because that happened once. I don't even remember what I was interviewed about, but apparently I did a good job. But after, I was so freaked out about it and didn't ask like where it was going to be aired or anything, and was just terrified. And then someone said, oh yeah, I saw you on television. And I was just like, did I look like it? Did I speak? Did I just stare at the camera? Like, what was it? Remember Brady Bunch, the youngest Cindy, where the camera went on and Cindy just stared. It's like, did I just do that? Or did I say anything? Did I stumble? No, you did really good. And it's like, okay, good. And after that experience, I decided that whenever I see people walking around with a camera in downtown Seattle, I just turn around and go the other way. I don't even like walking behind, like being the background traffic when they're doing an interview outside. I just go I walked into the street to get away because I don't want to be, I don't know what is wrong with me.
I'm laughing because I would totally be the same way.
I mean, this is the episode where we explain how much we don't like people.
I do. I'm just very introverted in like public. Like I like talking to people I know. I actually met some really nice people at that expo. Like this one guy is a dog trainer. I had like this fabulous conversation. I might have him on Believe in Dog podcast. You know, I'm talked to these CBD people. Like I'm great one-on-one. But I'm not good with like people.
It's too much. I mean, I had to really think about, going to Super Zoo, which actually what's so funny is that Super Zoo this last year would have probably been a great year to go because it probably wouldn't have been as crowded. But there's one part of Super Zoo, whenever I haven't been in years, but when I would go, I would come close to canceling my trip every single year, just thinking about it. But there's one part where you leave the trade room floor and go back to, your hotels or anything. And it's just this huge wide hallway of bodies and everyone's just moving forward. And then you can't go fast. So if you're in a hurry, you're just stuck in this crowd and you can't slow down. If your shoe comes untied, you have to somehow get yourself against the wall, against this moving crowd of bodies. And so when COVID happened, I'm thinking about that hallway with COVID going on. And I'm just like, yeah, I just can't. And it's just too many people. It's too many people. But
well, I will tell you, when I went to that Albany Expo last year, I literally would position myself in the back near the door so that way I could jump out and be first out the door because I didn't want to be caught in any kind of people crush like that. Yeah.
I do two things. I either sit at the back and then slowly leave right as it's wrapping up.
Yeah.
Or I go to the front and I don't stay at the front to speak to the speaker. I just, when it's over, I go to that wall.
Yeah. To let all the rest. Yeah. I'm very I get very overwhelmed by that kind of thing.
It is. It's a bit much. I think that, I'm the person that hides underneath tables at people's booths just so I can get a break from all the people. But I think the best event that I've been to that didn't really tax me too much was the Dogs Naturally magazine event because it was a lot of people, but everything was so spread out. There was just plenty of room everywhere. So it's I could breathe. Whereas, smaller venues where everything's sort of tightened up is, and even the one in Southern California was really well done too, because they purposefully had it so that everything was spread out. They did it, for COVID purposes, but I feel like it was introvert friendly as well.
So I just have to tell you the fairgrounds building where the expo is, it's called the Cow Palace. And I just like saying that.
That sounds very nice. Well, I'm looking forward to the Albany Expo. I will be attending. And so I changed my mind once again, and I will be attending. I haven't bought my tickets, to go there yet, but I will do that maybe next month. Buy the tickets so I can't change my mind again.
I already got my hotel reserved. So I would suggest making the hotel reservations because it's the same weekend as some local college graduations.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Thank you. Then I will do that. So I guess I'll take care of that this week then. Ugh.
I'm really excited because I think my veterinarian is coming.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's always cool when the veterinarians come because it's just it's one of those things where, they can learn something too, but I also think it's kind of good for them to see what we're learning.
Yeah.
So that when we come into the clinic and we have these questions, they can know where it's coming from. Because my last veterinarian, Dr. Goodry, she joined a lot of groups on Facebook, and she didn't say anything. She would just follow along with the discussions, and I think it helped her with just better respond to people's questions because, instead of, dismissing people when they have a question, which I think some people experience, and it's, you don't have to agree, but, can we have a conversation? That would be nice. So, yay.
Well, I'm excited.
It'll be good. It'll be fun.
I'll make sure we have links in the show notes for that too.
Well, Erin, it was wonderful chatting with you.
Always a pleasure. Until next time.
Bye, guys.